The expensive coffee splashed across my white blouse, burning hot and deliberate. Oops, Jessica smirked, holding her now empty cup. You should watch where you're going. Though I suppose cleaning up messes is in your blood, isn't it? Like father, like daughter. Around us, the employees of Morgan Industries pretended not to watch, but I could feel their eyes. It was just another Monday morning in the corporate headquarters where my stepsister was a rising executive, and I was the newest member of the maintenance staff. If only they knew the truth. Dad, my real dad, not Jessica's father who'd married my mom 3 years ago, had been more than just a janitor. James Morgan had founded Morgan Industries 30 years ago, building it from nothing into a Fortune 500 company. But to protect me from his enemies and gold diggers, he kept my existence secret, living a humble life as the building's maintenance manager while secretly running the company through his board of trustees. Only he died 6 months ago, taking his secrets to the grave. Or so everyone thought. I wiped the coffee from my blouse, remembering his last words to me. Emma, my smart girl, wait 6 months. The letter will explain everything. Just promise me you'll stick to the plan. So I'd waited, watching as my new stepfather Robert, Dad's supposedly trusted CFO, and his precious daughter Jessica took more and more control of the company, watching as they slowly dismantled everything Dad had built, laying off loyal employees and cutting corners for profit. Watching, waiting, and cleaning floors while the letter Dad had left with his lawyers burned a hole in my thoughts. You missed a spot. Jessica's voice cut through my memories. She was still standing there, enjoying her moment of power. Though I suppose attention to detail isn't really your strong suit, not everyone can be blessed with both beauty and brains. I looked at my stepsister, really looked at her. Designer suit, perfect makeup, cruel smile. She looked exactly like the corporate shark she aspired to be. Everything my father had hated about modern business. You're right, I said quietly, dabbing at my blouse. Not everyone can have both. Some people just have to settle for expensive clothes and an empty soul. Her face darkened. Watch yourself, little janitor. Daddy might have given you this job out of pity, but I can take it away just as easily. Your daddy, I corrected, feeling a surge of satisfaction as confusion crossed her face. Not mine. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Chen, Dad's lawyer. It's time. 6 months to the day since Dad's death. The waiting was finally over. Excuse me, I said to Jessica, who was still trying to process my comment. I have a board meeting to attend. A board meeting? She laughed so loudly that several employees looked up. In that coffee-stained blouse? Don't be ridiculous. The board doesn't waste time with maintenance staff. I smiled, thinking of the letter in Mr. Chen's office. We'll see about that. The next hour passed in a blur, meeting Mr. Chen, opening Dad's letter with trembling hands, reading his explanation of how he'd secretly transferred 51% of company shares to me on my 18th birthday, hiding them in a complex web of shell companies until the right moment. The company is yours now, Emma, he'd written. I know you'll run it the right way, with both your head and your heart, just like your mother would have wanted. Walking into the boardroom was like stepping into another world. 12 men and women in expensive suits sat around a massive table, with Robert at the head. Jessica stood behind his chair, still looking smug despite her confusion at my presence. What is the meaning of this? Robert demanded as Mr. Chen and I entered. This is a closed meeting. Actually, Mr. Chen said smoothly, placing his briefcase on the table. Miss Morgan has every right to be here. As the majority shareholder of Morgan Industries, she has some concerns about the company's recent direction. The room erupted in chaos. Robert jumped to his feet, face turning red. Jessica's perfect makeup couldn't hide her shock. The board members started talking all at once, papers rustling as they demanded explanations. This is absurd, Robert shouted. I've known James Morgan for 20 years. He had no children. That's where you're wrong, I said, my voice carrying over the noise. He had me, and he knew exactly what kind of man you were, Robert. That's why he made sure I would have the power to stop you when the time was right. Mr. Chen began distributing copies of the documentation. Birth certificate, share transfers, Dad's letter explaining everything. With each page, Robert's face grew paler. This can't be legal, Jessica whispered, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She was finally realizing that the janitor's daughter she tormented for months was actually her boss. "Oh, it's completely legal," Mr. Chen assured her. "In fact, Miss Morgan has already filed paperwork to reverse the recent layoffs and launch a full audit of all financial decisions made in the last 6 months." I sat down at the table in my coffee-stained blouse and faced the board. "My father built this company on principles of integrity and fairness. It's time we return to those values." "You can't do this." Robert slammed his fist on the table. "You're just a maintenance worker. You know nothing about running a company." Actually, I pulled out my MBA diploma from my bag. I graduated top of my class from Harvard Business School. Dad insisted I learn every aspect of business before taking over, including, I smiled at Jessica, how it feels to be treated like you're nothing. The board members were looking at me with new respect. They'd all known my father, worked with him for years, and now they could see him in my face, in my determination. "There will be some changes," I announced, standing up. "Starting with a complete review of all executive positions. Those who've been abusing their power might want to start updating their resumes." Jessica grabbed her father's arm, her designer bracelets jingling. "Daddy, do something." But Robert was already backing toward the door, his empire crumbling around him. He'd married my mother for her connection to the company, never suspecting that connection was through me, not her. "One more thing," I called after them. "Jessica, since you're so concerned about cleaning up messes, you can start with the coffee you spilled earlier. The cleaning supplies are in the maintenance closet. Though I suppose I couldn't resist adding, attention to detail isn't really your strong suit." The boardroom door slammed behind them, leaving blessed silence. "Well," one of the senior board members said finally, "James would have enjoyed that." A laugh rippled through the room, breaking the tension. These people had been Dad's friends, his trusted advisors. They kept his secret all these years, watching and waiting just like me. "Now," I said, opening my father's old leather portfolio, "shall we discuss the future of Morgan Industries?" But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. One that would test everything my father had taught me about business, family, and justice. The next 2 weeks were a corporate war. Robert and Jessica didn't go quietly. They leaked stories to the press about a hostile takeover by an inexperienced janitor. They tried to rally shareholders against me. Jessica even showed up at my mother's house, crying crocodile tears about how I was destroying her family. But Dad had taught me well. For every attack, I had a defense ready. When they leaked to the press, I released Dad's personal videos, years of recordings explaining his plan, his reasons for hiding me, and his disappointment in Robert's leadership. The media ate it up. Secret Harris reveals billionaire father's double life. When they approached shareholders, I presented my Harvard credentials and a detailed 5-year plan to increase company value while maintaining ethical practices. The shareholders weren't just convinced, they were thrilled. But Jessica's visit to Mom, that was different. Personal. "How could you do this to Robert?" Mom had cried over the phone. "After everything he's done for us?" "Everything he's done for us?" I couldn't hold back anymore. "Mom, he married you to get closer to Dad's company. Did you never wonder why he proposed right after Dad made him CFO?" "That's not true. Robert loves me." "Then why did he file for divorce this morning?" The silence on the phone was deafening. "What?" Mom's voice was small. "Mr. Chen found the paperwork. Robert's lawyers filed it first thing today. He's claiming irreconcilable differences and trying to get half of your assets." I paused. "Including the house Dad left you." The sound of breaking glass came through the phone. "Mom?" I asked, worried. "I'm okay," she said, but her voice had changed, hardened. "Just dropped a glass. Emma, tell me everything. From the beginning." So I did. About Dad's secret identity as company founder. About Robert's systematic dismantling of Dad's ethical practices. About the shell companies and hidden shares. About how Dad had made me work my way up from the bottom, while secretly completing my MBA, teaching me every aspect of the business. "James," Mom whispered when I finished. "He always said he had a plan. Even on his deathbed, he said everything would work out. He wanted to protect us, Mom. That's why he lived so simply. Why he made me promise to wait 6 months after his death before revealing everything. And Robert and Jessica, all this time, used us to get closer to the company," I confirmed gently. "Dad knew. It's why he set everything up the way he did. The next day, Mom showed up at my office with a stack of papers. I found these in Robert's home office, she said, eyes red but determined. I think you'll find them interesting. The papers detailed years of financial manipulation, unauthorized transfers, and offshore accounts. Robert hadn't just been destroying Dad's company, he'd been stealing from it. Mom, I breathed, paging through the documents. This is exactly what we needed. She straightened her shoulders, looking more like herself than she had in years. No one uses my daughter or my husband's memory like this. No one. The emergency board meeting I called that afternoon was one for the history books. Robert and Jessica arrived looking confident, probably expecting another round of their media war. Instead, they found federal auditors waiting alongside the board members. What is this? Robert demanded. This, I held up Mom's documents, is evidence of extensive financial fraud. The FBI is very interested in these offshore accounts you've been using, Robert. Jessica's face went pale. Daddy? But Robert was already backing toward the door, only to bump into two FBI agents. Robert Williams, one agent said, "You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and financial misconduct. You can't do this." Jessica screamed as they led her father away in handcuffs. We're family. No, Mom said from the doorway, making everyone turn. You're not. And by the way, Jessica, I want you out of my house by tonight. The aftermath was both better and worse than I'd expected. Robert took a plea deal, agreeing to return the stolen funds in exchange for a lighter sentence. Jessica disappeared to Europe, though her Instagram still occasionally featured bitter posts about family betrayal. Mom sold the house and bought a cozy cottage near the beach, something she'd always wanted but Robert had dismissed as beneath their status. She started painting again, rediscovering the artist she'd been before grief, and Robert had changed her. As for Morgan Industries, we didn't just survive the scandal, we thrived. I reinstated Dad's ethical business practices, rehired the laid-off workers, and launched a foundation supporting young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. 1 year later, I sat in Dad's old office, my office now, looking at his photo on the wall. The same photo that had sat on his maintenance cart for years, hiding in plain sight. Miss Morgan, my assistant poked her head in. The new maintenance staff is here for orientation. I smiled, thinking of my own days in that uniform. Send them in. And Sarah? Make sure the coffee machine in orientation is stocked with the good beans, not the cheap stuff. Yes, Ms. Morgan. Oh, and this came for you. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a magazine, Forbes 30 Under 30 issue. My face looked back from the cover, along with the headline, The Hidden Heiress, How Emma Morgan Transformed Her Father's Legacy. Dad would have hated the attention but loved the story. A story about integrity winning over greed, about patience defeating arrogance, about a janitor's daughter who cleaned up more than just coffee spills. I touched the maintenance badge I kept framed on my desk, right next to my Harvard diploma. Both were equally important parts of who I was, who Dad had taught me to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Proud of you, sweetheart. Both of us are. I looked at Dad's photo again and smiled. He'd given me more than just a company. He'd given me the tools to run it right, with both strength and compassion, with both success and ethics. Standing up, I grabbed my blazer. Time to welcome the new maintenance staff. After all, you never know which one might be a future CEO in training. Some lessons, like some legacies, are best learned from the ground up.